Hello, good evening and welcome to this Cybrox. It's your Rangers podcast. My name's Scott Patterson. As always, you are very welcome and we appreciate you joining us on your Sunday night for taking your time out. Big show to discuss tonight on a big week for the football club. A big Sunday today as well, we have to say, which we'll get to as the night goes on. Before we get into it, I'd like to say a big hello to our friends at Zenith Coins. Of course, they look after us on the podcast. They are giving every Rangers fan the opportunity to win their own memorable coin collection. They've created a wonderful set of 5 separate coins, one for the Founding Fathers, one of Ibrox Stadium, one of the Cup Winners' Cup squad of Barcelona 1972, a 9-in-a-row coin, and finally and fifthly, the 55th League Championship win under Steven Gerrard. You can visit and check them out now at alltheWsZenithCoins.com. Joining us tonight, the boss is on. Tommy, hi, how are you?
I do enjoy those intros. Yes, I'm very, very well. Thank you very, very much.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming on. And joining us, he's back. He's been on a couple of times. He was on, of course, with Craig and Kyle doing In the Dugout. We're really pleased to have Derek Clark from the Rangers Review back on. Hi, Derek. How are you?
Yeah, good to be on, Scott. It's been a long time. Always good to come on and talk all things Rangers, even though it's not been as pleasant as we all hoped.
Yes, listen, that's absolutely right, and we'll get to that because there is a lot to discuss. Tommy, I'm going to start with you. Been a bizarre week, I think, as far as build-up to domestic football has concerned. And I think I speak for everyone in the call when we've all went to football for many a year now. It was really disappointing to go to a football match yesterday and see such an important minute silence disrupted in the manner it was.
Yeah, I think that's broadly encapsulated it. The additional saddest part was unsurprising. And I think that's probably the takeaway. Now, listen, you can have any position you want. It's a free society about, monarchy, about, republicanism, about the balance of hierarchical hereditary titles versus politics, etc. Really not particularly in the mood to drain that conversation this evening, but when you get down to it, there's just a part of basic decency there. It's a minute's applause, a minute's silence, I should say. We maybe come to the applause one in a little while as well. And you're not actually marking a respectful point about an institution at that point. What you're saying is someone's passed away, everyone's looking to just have a minute's silence to reflect not only on that person and what that means, but by definition, you always reflect on your own mortality in these minutes.
Yeah.
And maybe some of the loved ones that you've lost along the way, because it's all one story of humanity, so to speak. And then you get people who just think that it's big, it's clever, it's an opportunity to be the noise. And I mean that in obviously 2 ways. And it was significantly disappointing. And these people, by and large, don't have an idea about the sense of what they portray. So yes, they're small-minded in and of themselves. They portray their club as small-minded, and then they portray Scottish society as being relatively riven by division and small-minded because it can't just do the basic things of decency. So yeah, football takes a back seat at that point, and you think, what did you actually do? What did you achieve by your actions there? You didn't achieve anything other than to cover yourself in opprobrium, to show yourself cast in probably the worst type of light, and hell mend them.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, anyone who's follows the podcast will be aware I often speak about where I sit in the ground just because I like to. I'm right next to the director's box, so I see everyone of any sort of stature coming in out of the director's box. And at half time, when the Dundee United officials that were at the game were going back up for their pie and bovril and whatever it is they get served in there, they got an absolute beasting from the guys that were in and around the director's box. And listen, deservedly so. They looked ashen-faced. I burst onto Twitter last night when I got in for the game to say it was pretty uncomfortable watching them get the doing that they got. Derek, you're based down south, so you're not based up here in the weeds of it all. What's the general? I mean, we saw the banners in the Champions League last week, which I don't really want to give too much credence to be honest with you, but it's hard to ignore what happened yesterday in maybe a British football scale. Is it mentioned much down south? How's it been viewed?
Well, I covered the game. I covered Bolton down South Scotland. I done the MK Dons game against Bolton on Tuesday, and they had the minute silence, and the national anthem was played, and there was no protest or anything like that. And then likewise at the weekend, Bolton played Peterborough, and we had not only the national anthem, but we had a verse from the Bolton club chaplain beforehand, and then we had the local pipe band, and also an international singer as well, belting out the national anthem. So it was impeccably observed at the minute silence, and both sets of fans were singing the national anthem as well. It's not a thing down here, but when I look back home in Scotland, I see that the Hibs supporters, I think yesterday, be crying it, having some sort of protest. The Dundee United fans likewise. Then, of course, today we've seen some sort of protest in Paisley, which was always going to happen. Everyone knew that was going to be the case. We've seen it during the week over in Poland as well, and it's understandable. I'm all for free speech and what have you, but almost seems like certain football fans just want to be more controversial than others, and they get a right kick out of people being upset at the reactions and what have you. So, listen, it is what it is. It's to be expected, but it leaves a sour taste in the mouth. Down south, I think every team, from what I've seen, have observed a minute silence and sang the anthem and what have you, without too much in the way of protest. I think there was something that kicked off with regards to Liverpool fans. I wasn't at their game, so I can't comment too much on that, but I realise there's a bit of animosity towards the royal family with regards to them. But in the main, I think, Scott, it was there was no such issues down south. But it's when you look at your phone from what's been happening back home, and you're like, Jesus. So, it's almost rebels without a cause, just trying to create a scene for just to try and make themselves heard, if you know what I mean. They don't actually have any animosity towards Queen Elizabeth or the royal family as such. It's just to try and have a go and create as much attention and get as much attention onto themselves as possible.
And listen, you've said quite a few things I think Tommy and I'll instantly sort of jump on it and take nice. So, but I'll stick with you, Derek. Scottish football gets a tough time in this country, rightly or wrongly, whether you believe the brand is good or bad, whether you think Doncaster should be in a job, shouldn't be in a job. This is not a good look for our game, ultimately.
No, absolutely. And you see, I mean, prominent figures worldwide coming out in their condemnation, but you look at the comments when they do so, and they almost, the fan groups take great pride in people being disgusted by the actions. I'm talking about the likes of Piers Morgan, who even came out today and spoke of his disgust. Likes on Talk Sport, Simon Jordan speaking about his dismay about it as well. But it's almost like a badge of honour for those that take great delight in protesting about this sort of thing. So it's one of those, you're not going to get rid of it. I don't know what the right course of action is against it. I mean, there is freedom of speech, of course. I know St Mirren when adopted the round of applause as opposed to the minute silence today. I'm not quite sure that was the right course of action, but what is the right course of action? That you're always going to get some sort of protest. It leaves a bad taste in the mouth. For me, I liked Antonio Cholak's, I'm sure we'll mention him, his comments yesterday as to why he went over and celebrated in front of the Dundee United fans. And his comments yesterday really ring true. A guy from Croatia is not really get much in the way of an affinity to the British Isles and to the royal family, but that level of decency and respect that he has, not many people living in Britain really have towards just being silent for a minute. I mean, it's not too much to ask, but there you go.
Yeah, listen, loads of great points here. Derek, I should say, Blue Nose 70 has jumped into our chats tonight, and he's saying that Scott Patterson must be Rangers royalty, which I assume will mean more to you. I assume he's one of your followers in the Daily Show across the Rangers Review. So listen, whether he's right or not, Tommy, I can tell by the raising of the eyebrows that you don't agree with that one bit. I'm not Rangers royalty.
I think every royal family has always had children born on the wrong side of the blanket. Is that what you mean by Rangers royalty? No, listen. I'm sure it's the case when you're up there hobnobbing in the director's box. But you know, I know we don't want to spend an over amount of time speaking about protests, etc. But you know, essentially we all like watching guys and or women kick a bit of wee football. When you get moments like this, it shows you something slightly deeper. I don't want to get overly conceptual about it, but it then tells you the kind of nation you live in. And we know that we live in a riven nation at the moment. You've got some people who support clubs where they think they actually live in a different country, but that's a slightly, different case for specific reasons. What you have here is people thinking that they can make a broader point by booing or whatever. I mean, I know Derek was referencing a few there. I'm not entirely convinced that I would take any moral lessons from Piers Morgan at any point in time. It's like Dante's 8th circle of hell, where it's just him doing a talk show. But the point being, through that lens, you've got world leaders, world figures, journalists of all persuasions, in all nations saying, "Hold on, what's going on there?" Because these people can't just do the basics, and that's the thing. You can take, as I said, don't want to duplicate. You can take any position you want. You're welcome to it. All right, free country and all that. But are you able to not disrupt a minute's silence? Yeah. And I'm with Derek. Holding a minute's applause is absolutely the weakest type of response when you know there's going to be a problem. Because all you're doing there is saying, absolutely know it's there, just don't want it on our turf, want to walk past it. So what we'll do is we'll just create some noise, right? Magic. But all you're doing there is pandering to the people who are deriving the majority to say, well, we can't have the minute's silence. Call them out, have the silence, and then point to the ones that aren't able to do it. That's the only way that you actually subjectively put the spotlight on them. And then you can have an open and honest debate. Where that possible in a country like ours, that would be a good thing. But it's all about pandering in this nation sometimes.
Yeah.
Scott, yes, Derek. Scott, we had a minute's applause in the 70th minute down at the Bolton game on Saturday, for obviously 70 years on the throne. So there you go. You get your minute's applause there, and the coaching staff of both teams and the fans of both sets of teams and the officials were taking part in it. So I think it was a bit of a cop out by St Mirren. I know they've been under a bit of pressure, and it's hard to choose what the right form of action is, because there's going to be a protest at some stage. But not only did they have a minute's silence and the singing of the national anthem down south, but we also had that minute applause at the 70th minute. It just shows you the difference between England and Scotland. All the protests has come from matches in Scotland, which shows you the disdain among supporters. But again, I don't think it's necessarily towards an ill feeling towards the royal family or Queen Elizabeth. I think it's just to make a point and just look, we are protesting just for protesting sake. Yeah, no, listen, I think you're right. We had the minutes of applause on the 70th minute at Ibrox yesterday, and it was a hearty applause. I think it was very loud, and it was listen. It was a nice day to be Ibrox yesterday. It was quite a poignant day. It was somber, as it was Napoli midweek. It was just a bit strange. However, that simple minute at the start of the match, I think, painted a picture. It doesn't, and I would say it does not add to an already really crappy relationship the Rangers have with Dundee United for all the right reasons. It's not improved it one bit. Tommy, on to the match itself. Rangers lined up, and I was a wee bit surprised that Leon King and Charlie McCann both got starts yesterday afternoon. Yeah,
I think, jungle drums, etc. were being pounded before the match that they might very well come in, and they've been in and around the first team, so there's always an opportunity. But both coming in as starters, somewhat driven by injuries and lack of form to some people as well. The point being, they came in and they did a really good job.
Yeah,
and that's the point. You can look at that. I'm sure we'll cycle over this actually during the course of this conversation. You can start to look at that two ways. It is absolutely inherent within the, what's the cliched word? Let's use model, right? For want of a better one, right? Development model, pathway, whatever you happen to go to, right? I'm evidently in a bit of a truculent mood, but to get youngsters in there and start to grow the value of them. So you're doing that selected game model, for example. But then there's also a case that I don't think there's been a better time in the modern iteration of Rangers, and by that I mean the last couple of years, to say those youngsters have got a really good chance to stake a claim and be in amongst it, because you've got injuries and you've got a real deflation of performance by some key players. And then you look at some of the actual inherent members of the squad that are ticking over in terms of their age as well. So if players like King and McCann, maybe particularly McCann, actually can come in and show that midfield performance, then you look about that midfield and you think it's going to have to be overhauled in the summer anyway. So are you putting yourself front and centre? It wasn't specifically the point of your question. Will be no surprise to you or any of the listeners that I've taken the ball and ran it into the corner, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's always good to see. It's always good to see younger players coming through and getting time, and it's great to see players where you hear a lot and you see them at a lower level, B team level, reserve level, whatever you again want to call that, to see them in the first team environment, because there is no, there's no heavier jersey than the first team one. Yeah. So come in and perform in a game where there was going to be eyes on it, not just from the fans, but they knew the weight of expectation of the stuff that's went before, that people would be looking at that game for a lot of different reasons. Came in and did a particularly good job, in my opinion.
And Derek, as surprising as it was to perhaps see Leon King and Charlie McCann start, it was equally surprising, I would argue, to see again no Ben Davies, Ridvan Yilmaz, Robbie Matondo anywhere to be seen. I mean, I appreciate that the former two were on the bench. Matondo wasn't missing. Everyone, the jungle drums seemed to suggest it was a disciplinary issue pre-game. Club have since, we think, cleared that up. And Morelos got no game time at all yesterday, of course, which surprised me. Glen Camara, nowhere to be seen. So for all the headline was very much on King and McCann starting. There's a by headline that goes alongside that says the guys that we've put Dosh out for in the summer are nowhere to be seen right now.
Yeah, I've got to say, I was delighted to see McCann start. Yeah. We do our predicted lineups in the Rangers review site, and I had him in my midfield because I think he's totally ready to start in that Rangers midfield. I think they need an injection of energy and a bit of freshness in there. So I was pleased to see him. Leon King, I've been impressed with every time I've seen him. I felt he did well when he came on at halftime in Amsterdam. And I think it tells a big story that I know he was brought on against Napoli as opposed to Ben Davies. Van Bronckhorst, of course, was asked about that post-match, and he said he's coming back from an injury. But it raises questions, Scott. I mean, if he's fit enough to be on the bench, surely he's fit enough to play. Listen, Leon King's a top talent. He's got a bright future ahead of him, and I think it's great to see one of your own play for the club. But when you spend so much money on a guy to bring him into the club, then you're asking questions why he's not yet featuring. And Yilmaz is, question marks over that one. See, when he get brought in, I was one for saying it's going to take him a bit of time. He's signing for a club with a different culture. He has to learn a different language. Scottish football is nowhere near what Turkish football is like, and it'll take him a little bit of time. And Borna Barisic, to his credit, has been probably one of the few standout performers in the last few weeks. So I can understand why he's kept his place in the team. But surely there's some way of integrating him into the side. With the amount of money that you've spent on this guy, we've all seen the YouTube clips. He looks he looks brilliant going forward. We've seen that goal we set up for Scott Arfield against Queen of the South. Albeit I know that the standard of the opposition isn't the greatest, but he looks good going forward. Surely there's a way of integrating him into the side, especially when you've got Ryan Kent, who's been off form for some time now. I can't remember the last time he really had a standout performance for Rangers. So, that is a right mystery for me, Scott. God knows what's going on with that one. Alfredo Morelos was a surprise, I'm sure, to everyone. That I had him in as leading the line on Saturday. Now, not to getting away from Antonio Cholak. He's been the one real bonus for Rangers in this summer's transfer window. He's really hit the ground running. He's been terrific in front of goal. But to not feature again after being trusted to lead the line on Wednesday night was a strange one.
Really bizarre.
I know people are now saying surely you can play both of them. I know maybe Morelos on the right hand side, and I know Giovanni Van Bronckhorst likes a one man up top, but Rangers are struggling at the moment. There surely is a way of featuring both those players. I mean, I don't know how to do it, but that's why Giovanni Van Bronckhorst has paid the big money. But they need to get Morelos back in that side because he's so influential to this Rangers team.
Tommy, keen to get your thoughts. So one of the big debates we have in the WhatsApp group, and I appreciate sometimes you can't be bothered getting involved in that. However,
you mean sometimes? I think it's a pretty standard thing. I can't be bothered.
What I would say is that there's a debate in there over Leon King versus Ben Davies, and I'm very much of the opinion is Rangers are not forking out the money they forked out on that boy for him to come and play second fiddle to a guy that's in his teens who's just breaking into the first team. I just don't think there's any debate over that. What I do wonder, and we know that Davies has been carrying injuries, but Derek's right, if he's fit enough to be in the bench, he's surely fit enough to start. Has to be. Surely, I mean, it's an obvious argument. I just wonder if Giovanni's seen of Ben Davies and thought, do you know what I mean? Leon King's a better option in there as centre half alongside Connor Goldson just now. And in addition to that, it may be a big assistance in his development moving forward.
Possibly. First of all, I hadn't realised anybody had noticed that I just...
Everyone notices.
Well, my apologies to the group. I will make sure that I interact more with the team in future. It's because I've got nothing interesting to say. I'm sure the listeners will agree with me in the comment section. But yeah, listen, I think those points are well made. I was furiously looking up what the translation of Yilmaz into Norwegian might be. I thought it was maybe Stensas. But I'll swiftly move past that. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and you nail it in terms of the question there. So you look at Davies, good pedigree, came from a good squad at Liverpool, etc. And it's no shame that it didn't quite work out for him there. Comes up here, a bit of money spent on him as well. Yes, you're coming back from an injury. Again, I'm trying not to duplicate what both of you have just said there. You either say that he is not fit and will have to spend time recuperating, and you play him on a short-term loan basis, or you put him in the reserves. By putting him on the bench and then continually not turning to him, it creates this conversation. Yeah. It creates that void in terms of, right, so why have you put him in? Because Amsterdam, perfect example, you're not turning to him in a critical moment. So, so the player's sitting there and going, well, I've got zero trust from the manager. I'm sitting here and the young boys in ahead of me. And then, okay, I'll get my chance though, because it's domestic. I can maybe show that I can step in there and build myself up. No, you won't.
Yeah.
You're going to sit on the bench whilst he starts. So at some point, it really just has to crystallise. Is he the answer? Because when he was purchased, or brought in, I should say, I thought he was going to be the answer. It's him and Goldson. Everybody else will be dropping in and out. Yeah. Right? He's your long-term replacement for Philip Helander, if you like, who I don't think we'll ever see again, so to speak, other than on the dinner speaking tour post his career, right? But yeah, ultimately something has to be clarified there. Is Davies good enough and fit enough to actually start to play, or is he just going to be a bench warmer? In which case, right, fine, you've got King there, and that's the go-to. And I sensed maybe it is Gio's looked at him and said, no, I really don't fancy it. Or perhaps the injury is worse than maybe we first thought, and it will take a long recuperation. Yeah. Don't put him on the bench then. Aye. But right now it seems as though King's holding the cards.
And Tommy, I'll stick with you because this is one last thing on the sort of team selection from yesterday, certainly, and was no Glen Camara anywhere to be seen, not even on the bench. Of course, transfer deadline day saw him linked with a couple of teams in France, and if your translation of French is very good, I'm sure yours is, it would suggest that he maybe wasn't a million miles away from making that move happen. He looks disappointed that it hasn't, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, back in the day, I was very well versed in ordering a Kronenberg Blanc. That's about as good as it used to get. I mean, Glen Camara has went full circle. It's a bit of a conundrum in terms of the seesaw of fans' opinions. So 50,000, right, magic, okay, brilliant. He's absolutely a talented player. He's a genuine footballer, and I don't think there's actually quite as many genuine footballers in that Rangers squad as we like to tell ourselves, right? But he's a genuine footballer who's got the real appreciation of the ball and space, etc. Doesn't mean he doesn't make mistakes, right? Before anybody jumps in and says, well, what about Napoli? He's made a rod for his own back there. But I think I do think he's not in the setup. I do think he would have got that move if he could have engineered it. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I don't think there's anything behind the scenes that he's a bad worker or anything like that. But I think he's maybe had his time at Rangers now. And it's a cliche, right? If a decent bid, well, everybody is subject to a decent bid, right? Everybody's for sale at Rangers. It's as simple as that. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just the way it works. And his agent saying, listen, I think it's really time to go. There doesn't seem to be an appreciation for his footballing talent. I don't think he adds as much in as we hoped he would. And I think we can all part company in good terms. We make a really good profit on him. The problem is maybe even though I've said I don't think there's any problems, he doesn't seem to be seen anywhere. So you're either in that subjectivity of, is there something personal? We've seen that with Roy Mackay. I don't want to drain that too much. Or is it a case of there are moves afoot because he doesn't want to be playing second fiddle or whatever? I'd like to hope it's neither of those things. One, I wouldn't wish the former on anybody, and the latter I wouldn't think is his go-to attitude from what you see. It might just be a case of come the January window, we see Glen Camara go to another league and perform really, really well. Because I think he's one that I would definitely stamp a sell-on clause on. Yeah. I think he's got all the tools, but maybe it's time up at Rangers.
Yeah, absolutely. Derek, game kicks off, and I think Rangers start reasonably well. First chance of the game falls to and if you want it to fall to anyone in the team right now, you do not want it to fall to Ryan Kent, because his confidence is shot to bits, and he's got lots of time to put it wherever he wants to. And he really does neither. I think you alluded to just how much he's struggling. And I think yesterday kind of backs that up.
Yeah. On his day, Ryan Kent is a world beater. I mean, for Rangers, he's a talisman. He can change games with a bit of brilliance, but he's been off the boil for so long now. He needs... I feel like a spell on the sidelines would do him the world of good. Rangers have got options out on that left-hand side. Robbie Matondo, who of course wasn't in the matchday squad at the weekend, played a lot of games for Cercle Bruges last season over on that left-hand side and did well. In fact, when Rangers played Union earlier on in the season, one of the players there, and the coach was saying he was one of the best players. I think the player said he was the best player in Belgium for the second half of the season. And he was playing out on that left-hand side. Of course, he's not played there for Rangers, so I would like to see him get a shot out there. Fashion Sakala, we know, can play out there, but it's clear to see that the coaching staff don't fancy him. I talked about Ridvan Yilmaz earlier. Surely he can play in an advanced role ahead of Barisic and accommodate him. But Ryan Kent, for me, needs a spell on the sidelines. He's not producing anywhere near the quality that we know he's capable of. But he's almost someone that knows he plays week in, week out, and he's got no fear of losing his place. And I don't know if it's a mental issue. It's clearly his confidence is shot to bits, as you say, Scott. I'd like to see him just sit on the sidelines for one or two games. I don't see it happening, but of course we've got Liverpool coming up, Hearts away as well. I can't see it happening, to be honest, but I would like to see it. I can't see it. I don't know how he regains it. His form, of course, he's in the last year of his contract, him and Morelos as well. So there's that hanging over it, almost like Dolson last season. Whether they sign new deals remains to be seen. But at this point in time, the fact they haven't signed new deals, Rangers need to be looking elsewhere, I think, at filling that role on a long-term basis. And at the moment, he's not delivering. And I would like to see other players get a run out. You've got to think the likes of Sakala, as mentioned, Yilmaz and Matondo will be looking at that situation, a chance over on that left-hand side, because he looks a shadow of the player we know he can be.
And Tommy, as I say, I mean that chance, it comes at nothing each. It's the first real big opportunity of the game, and Kent's actually started to move himself. He's done his sort of standard step over, step back, and he's drifted inside. And before you know it, the ball's, I mean, he's 6-yard box. I mean, he has to, and it's one of these moments, I think, that if he scores that, you'll just see how it changes his mood, how it changes his game, how it changes his confidence. The fact that he doesn't get it the remainder of the game becomes a wee bit stodgy for him, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. I think that's probably fair. I mean, like most players, but particularly those offensive elements that we always talk about, he's a confidence player, and the confidence is shot to hell. I was maybe going to land on a different word there, but we'll stick with hell at the moment. In terms of he's working hard, but that's the bare minimum, right? And then you could actually pick holes in some of his positioning. Recently, I mean, I was certainly picking holes in it in the Napoli game, and the way that he squares up when he's receiving the ball.
Yeah.
It was actually quite not nice to watch, but if you looked at some of the Napoli players whose movement in the middle of the park was actually quite beautiful to watch at times as well. But a lot of their players taking the ball on the turn, pulling defenders out, etc. You know, Brian Kent was doing some of the stand-up, square shoulders, safe stuff, get the ball in, roll it back type of thing. But yeah, you're absolutely right, and I don't think there's any way, shape or form to say Ryan Kent is a terrible finisher. It's not good enough. You know, for the positions he finds himself in, he should absolutely be doing better. And the fact of the matter is, we've also been talking about this for some time since he came to the club. The fact that that's not gotten better is pretty worrying. And I know people will say, well, he scored some big goals, you know, Braga away, goal against Celtic, you know, there's a screamer against Hearts, I think, as well. But it's just not good enough. Those numbers should be higher. They should be better. And some of the opportunities he gets do need to be. I mean, there's one from a 6-yard box that I don't really want to talk about that's fresh in my mind as well. But quite frankly, yeah, he's not good enough in that area. And if he wants to be continually at Rangers and he wants to go somewhere else into a bigger league, so to speak, and get that bigger money, he's going to have to do something about it. I feel as though the majority of Rangers fans' patience has worn decidedly thin about that, though. And it may be a case of, listen, it was a big outlay. It was a big outlay. We've got some value for you because you've helped us with the Europa League run, qualifying for the UCL, etc., won a title. He might be another one that's just shifted off the wage bill.
Yeah, absolutely. Derek, obviously, Tommy refers to Kent just not being at it, not being quite good enough. We see Antonio Cholak has came in this summer and he's really hit the ground running. He arrived and obviously we're missing Roof, who we'll come to a little bit later on. Morelos obviously wasn't in action when Cholak arrived, so we've needed him to hit the ground and score goals. First goal he scored yesterday. Great work by the captain, darting the length of the pitch with the ball, squaring it. And I seen the guy behind me suggest it was a scuff. I don't think he catches it cleanly, but you take the finish every day of the week because it puts us one up and it gives us a bit of breathing space at that point.
Yeah, but I think he's been a sensational signing so far. I know he was getting a bit of stick when Rangers initially did sign him, and they had a couple of games. I think he didn't score in pre-season. Not like Rangers fans to judge players too early, but he's a sort of player. I spoke to a Malmo journalist when they signed him, and he said when he played for Malmo, he scored against the teams in the lower half of the division. He seemed to score dead easily against those sides that parked the bus, so to speak, and that sort of pricked my ears and thought, brilliant. And that's exactly what Rangers need. Absolutely. A guy that can find the back of the net against your stubborn defences, and we've seen it again on Saturday as well. He's hit the ground running. He's been brilliant. What I like about him is he knows where the back of the net is. He takes one touch, the first goal, one touch, get it on his right foot, and then bang in the back of the net. He doesn't mess about. His goal for the second one is a striker's instinct as well, and he's been brilliant for Rangers. They've been crying out for a player of that calibre, I think, since Chris Boyd, maybe a guy that you can. When's the last player that scored? Probably. I expect Cholak to hit 20 goals this season, and Rangers have been crying out for a guy like that can score against teams in the bottom half of the division. That's going to make it tough for you. They're going to set their stall out and play for a draw. So it's up to you to break them down. But he does. He's been brilliant for me in Europe. Of course, I was backing Morelos to start against Napoli. I think that was the right call. But against teams like Dundee United, and when you play your Ross Counties, Motherwells, Hibs, and what have you, I think Cholak has shown that he's if you supply him with service, he'll get you goals. So again, on Saturday, proved to be the match winner. Of course, with the 2 goals, you would have liked it to have been more comfortable, of course. But yeah, he's been a terrific buy for £1.8 million. It's been an absolute bargain so far for me.
Tommy, there's something really sexual about seeing a number 9 score on a Saturday afternoon in a blue jersey, isn't there? It's really nice.
I'm walking right past that question.
No, you're not. You're absolutely not.
Jeez. Okay, so as I take a moment to
is the
reflect
answer.
on that, take a moment to reflect on that. A Rangers number 9.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's just one of those ones. No, listen, it's always good, and you talk about, so you extend that, right? You love to have goals from all over the pitch, right? And successful teams have goals from all over the pitch. That's brilliant. But yeah, you want your strikers absolutely at it week after week, and that's what I like about Čolak as well. Undeniably, there's quality there. I think he is that. I haven't done the analysis, I have to say, fairly lazy of me, but in terms of his Rangers goals, between the sticks type of scenario,
absolutely,
that's where the finishes come from. I sense that I think I would be right about that they would be roughly around about the sticks. He's not he's not going to continually drag wide, although his work rate's really, really good. I think he does give us that different element. It's interesting from the Malmo journalist comments as well. And quite frankly, you'll take anything as long as somebody does their primary job, which is score goals. It's actually quite interesting because you could say, well, Ryan Kent's primary job is to assist, not score goals. Don't know if I'd agree with that, but I'm conscious of the potential comments there. I think Čolak looks good for his money. Do I think he's the absolute level that you would need at UCL? No, that's why you turn to Alfredo Morelos. But at some point, maybe this is the question for you both and the watchers as well. At some point, you're going to have to land on a consistent up top striker.
Yeah.
And is Alfredo Morelos anywhere close to doing enough to justify Čolak not keeping the jersey, even in Europe? I'm not entirely sure that Morelos is. So that's maybe the question. At what point does somebody cement that jersey? Because I don't like this flicking back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, when you talk about flicking back, there's something I want to come to, because we'll talk about Čolak's second goal. Now, it was a really, really good, clever finish. Speaks to your point, Tommy, the sort of flick at the near post to get his second in the afternoon, Derek. In between then and before half time, Alan McGregor makes a really good save from Glenn Middleton as he's clean through the goalkeeper, and it would have brought us in at 1-1 of course if Middleton has scored. And we've done this debate to death on the podcast, I have to say. And when we started with John McLaughlin, it seemed to have been tempered a wee bit. I don't think anyone really expected to see Alan McGregor again. McLaughlin then got injured. I wonder if we had a game this weekend coming, who do you think would start as the number one? Would it be McGregor, or do you think McLaughlin would walk back into the sticks? Sorry, I have to ask.
Well, this is a debate that's going to rage on, isn't it, until the end of the season, at least. I've got to be honest, I was all for John McLaughlin getting a chance as the number one at the start of the season. I think the game at Parkhead saw a lot of supporters call for McGregor to be reinstalled, and I can understand why. McLaughlin, I don't think he was at fault for any of the goals against Ajax in Amsterdam, but then, as you mentioned, he gets that injury, and then McGregor comes back and makes a double penalty save, as well as a number of other saves against Napoli. And listen, Alan McGregor for me is, I know there's a debate who's the greatest number one. It's McGregor for me, just due to the longevity and big matches that he's turned up in.
Tommy's turning to stone.
This is why I don't get involved in the WhatsApp group. This is exactly it.
Listen, I'm an Andy Gorham fanboy, but for me, I think McGregor just edges it. But listen, the guy's 40 years old. He's still a top goalkeeper, right? And I rate John McLaughlin as well. I think he's also a top keeper. But it's a tough one, isn't it? McLaughlin's obviously better at his feet, and he's better at the distribution side of things, coming and collecting crosses and that sort of things eerily. But you can't. McGregor against Napoli, I felt was just it was unfair. He was on a losing side. He was immense for Rangers. He almost got to that third penalty as well, of course. But it's a big call for Giovanni van Bronckhorst. He obviously has put his trust in John McLaughlin being the number one this season. That's why he earns the big bucks. I feel a wee bit for Robbie McCrory. I think for the sake of his own career, I don't think it does him any good being a number 3 at the moment. I think he needs to go out and play games somewhere. So it's a tough one. It's obviously going to be between McLaughlin and McGregor at the moment. I think McGregor's got the gloves just now, but whether McLaughlin comes back in, I'm not so sure. That's up to Giovanni Van Bronckhorst and the coaching staff. But one thing I'll say is I think Rangers need to invest in a new goalkeeper by, if not January, the summer.
Tommy, it's going to be interesting. We obviously just about we're breaking now into the international break, and you would imagine it gives John McLaughlin time to get up to a real fully fitness, 100% fit, if you like. And Derek's absolutely right. It gives Gio a huge decision. I think we go to Anfield before Tynecastle, don't we? That's right, isn't it?
No,
Tynecastle Anfield, isn't it?
Tynecastle Anfield, yeah.
It'll be very interesting to know who he rocks up at Tynecastle with as the number one. Listen, everyone knows what my personal. I think McGregor should be the man in the sticks. I think he's the best keeper out of the two of them. Full stop. And I think you have to be in a position where you're putting your best players into the starting lineup. Where do you sit on it?
Definitely not in the fence. Let me tell you that. So yeah, listen, the biggest compliment to McGregor, as I've said before, to Derek's part, is he's absolutely put himself in that conversation about Andy Gorham. I'm an Andy Gorham fan, but I can absolutely understand why people would say no, it's McGregor. That's how good they've got. There is, a thin sheet of paper between them, depending on how your view is. And I get the longevity point. It's also a problem there. I'm not going to duplicate what Derek said, but the important part for me is, and I think you're right, Scott, just to be really clear, whoever plays at Tynecastle, that's the nod, that's the confidence, that's the anointment. That's you until you lose the jersey.
Yeah.
The problem Rangers have faced right now, and I do think we need to go into the market, and I don't think it's one goalkeeper, I think it's a couple actually, as a matter of fact, is that we went through last season and it was clearly McGregor, that's fine. And then there was that whole farewell tour towards the end, McGregor's away. Next thing you know, you turn around and the goalkeeping ghost at the feast is back. So you're saying, well, hold on a minute, were you leaving or are you staying? Right, okay, well, I'm back, but I'm definitely not the number one. So McLaughlin's been given his shot. It's not worked out, and I agree. I don't think there was much he could have done against Ajax. Parkhead, okay, confidence destroyer, to be honest with you, and you make a high-profile mistake like that, you lose a large section of the fans that won't ever come back with you. And then McGregor steps in with those performances as well. Quite frankly, I think it'll be McGregor for the rest of the season. In all honesty, I think McLaughlin has had his shot, and that'll be it. We'll get to the end of the season and he'll go, and then you're left with the place of McCrory hasn't been able to nail anything down. I'm not throwing McCrory to the wolves here as a young boy, etc. But he's been out on loan, been to Livingston.
Yeah.
It's been so-so, if I'm being brutally honest. He came in obviously and did a decent job in the first team as well, but when is he going to get that seal of approval that he is getting the number one jersey? Or if you're going to lose McLaughlin and McGregor, because neither could sit and be number two again, that's not going to work. You're going to have to bring in a first team choice, or you go with McCrory. You're not going to go with McCrory because, personally speaking, I don't think it's good enough, right? But that is what it is. I'm not a goalkeeping coach. So you're going to have to outlay for some decent money or wages. And then I think you also need to decide whether McCrory's your backup or you bring in another one. And if that's the case, I'd imagine McCrory's agent will be saying we need to get out of here because we've got a career to build. That's the problem we face. You can live with McGregor between now and the end of the season because he's a really good goalkeeper. God forbid he gets an injury at his age, right? Or a worse injury considering the back problems that he manages through his training regime. I don't think there's any other way out of that particular conundrum. And to Derek's point, I'm all for bringing in another goalkeeper in, January, but I also have severe reservations about replacing that position midway through a season in terms of dropping somebody in. Now, evidently somebody will shout at me, well, what about Officer Dibble? And that's fine, right? Or Ronald Raffles and all that kind of good stuff. But it's just one of those positions that I just really like consistency and stability. And the problem with Rangers right now is there is no consistency and stability around about one of those formative points of the team. These things should be in violence. It's the reason I don't like the whole changing between league keeper, Europe, and cup keeper. I'm not a massive fan of that type of scenario either. Get your defensive lineup, including the goalkeeper, sorted. You tend to be a decent side and hard to break down. So a longer answer than I expect to give you there, but there's definitely There's definitely a problem that Rangers need to solve there. I reckon Gio will go with McGregor.
Derek, of course, McGregor was eventually beaten in the game at Ibrox yesterday. I felt that it was maybe the one thing that maybe Leon King, I think, done wrong yesterday. He got caught chasing the Dundee United sub that came on, and he was pulled right out of position. Allowed Dundee United to switch the ball out to Liam Smith, and he had an opportunity to crash it beyond McGregor, which he duly done. Other than that, I thought Leon King equipped himself really, really well. He can be quite happy with his performance yesterday. I just think yesterday was, for all the performance was rotten, for want of a better term or phrase. We're obviously at that point not aware what happens in Paisley today. What was more important for you yesterday? Was it getting the 3 points, or was it playing well on the back of 3 absolute scuddings?
Yeah, I wrote a piece in the Rangers review site saying it was all about performance for me. I was taking the result as read. I was fully expecting 3 points against it. A team struggling, coming off the back of a 9-0 drubbing, not got a manager, in disarray. I was hoping for a substantial win, a 3 or 4-0 at least, just to give the fans that bit of belief and encouragement heading into that international break after, of course, the 3 defeats, losing 11 goals without reply. So I've got to say, like many of the supporters that attended Ibrox on Saturday, a real sense of disappointment that hanging on again against a team that you should have been out of sight by. I mean, you shouldn't give Dundee United, a team of that calibre, no disrespect to Dundee United, but Rangers have got players that are far superior than theirs. They should be out of sight. So to be hanging on at the end, it just that doubt doesn't dissipate, and we head into the international break. Surprisingly, I've got to say, just 2 points behind, which lifts the gloom somewhat, but it shouldn't paper over the cracks. Rangers at the moment aren't playing anywhere near well enough to give the supporters a belief that they're going to go on and win the league title. Things need to change. You just hope that the coaching staff can work out the solutions during this international break, because Tynecastle is going to be raucous. We all know what sort of challenge Hearts are going to put up against Rangers. It's a cup final for them. They've got the fans on their back, of course. It's not going to be a walk in the park by any matter of means. Rangers are going to need to roll up their sleeves, and I just worry the mentality on that side at the moment. So many players off the boil, Scott. I'm just concerned. There's too many off the boil to go on a run of form just now, heading into the break for the World Cup. I hope I'm wrong, and they can work their magic and get the team firing on all cylinders again. But the proof is in the pudding. At the moment, Rangers are not playing anywhere near well enough. When was the last time they blew away a team?
Absolutely.
You struggle to think back. I mean, the PSV result in Eindhoven was superb, but PSV had chances to score it over there. But when you blow a team away, I struggle to think the last time Rangers really ran clear and blew a team apart. So that is a real concern at the moment.
And Tommy, Derek's absolutely right. I think we are, as a support, we are now at the stage where we are waiting for them to absolutely gub a team one week. And as you know from the get-go whether it's going to happen or not. I felt yesterday, I just felt after Kent missed that chance, it created a theme which would go on for the remainder of the game. I think we're at a stage where if we don't, and we never get early goals, but if we don't look like we have that impetus to try and get that early goal, the game becomes stuffy, quite unpleasant and not attractive to watch in the slightest.
Again, yeah, I think that's a fairly sensible and reasonable take in terms of, maybe play in when we do get the odd early goal, we then sit back. And the foot doesn't go all the way through the floor of the acceleration, and that is definitely a problem with this team. That there's we've got enough, or whether that's the strategy and the philosophy, we'll play cagey, we've got ourselves ahead or whatever. And I think 4-0 Ross County might have been the last time we actually scored some level of goals, truth be told. But yeah, there's definitely a problem there, and I'm with Derek, I expected us to turn over Dundee United. In my more lucid moments, maybe there was a wee bit of a worry that something might happen, but I'm willing to walk past that right now. I was looking for the performance. It didn't turn up. We walked away with the 3 points, and the way that the weekend's panned out, that's put a gloss on something, but it is very much papering over the cracks. I do believe, and I don't want to get hyperbole or hysterical or anything like that. I mean, I believe in longevity, and I believe that Gio gets a chance, right? But I think the game at Tynecastle was defining.
Yeah.
Actually, you go away, you've managed to get yourself within 2 points through really nothing of your own making, to be honest with you, having been turned over pretty badly at Parkhead and stuff like that. Your qualification for the Champions League was brilliant, but it's starting to look like it's maybe just a thanks for the check scenario, unless we get something from the doubleheader with Liverpool, which is incredibly, incredibly tough. So then you look at the domestic play out and you say, we've not been playing well. We go into that international break, we get round the training ground, we try and set things right, and then you run straight into I think it's an early kickoff in terms of the Hearts game. I think it's a 12:30 job.
12:30.
In there. Now, that is a bloody hard place to go, right? Yep. Now, if you come back off that international break and you run slap bang into a defeat, and I'm not being dismissive of the fact that Rangers could turn up and blow them out the water. They could play really, really well, but just play out that narrative. You come back, everybody's expecting, you're looking for it. Bump. The last thing that happened was rivals dropping points. You go straight into a game and you get turned over.
Yeah,
I think it's really hard for Gio to then try and right that ship, and more importantly, maybe for the players to believe that the ship can be righted, and that becomes a really difficult place. So I think if they can get over that, I think they've then got Liverpool, St Mirren, Liverpool, Dundee or Motherwell, maybe the other way about.
Yeah.
So it's an achievable run domestically after that, but they need to get over the Hearts game. It's a really, really big, formative, one of those pivotal games that you can plot your way through a season and go, that was big. And again, I think maybe the difference with the Hearts one is you would just take 3 points. I think I could live with a less than stellar performance if we get back from Edinburgh with 3 points in the pocket.
Yeah, listen, I think you're absolutely right. He simply cannot lose at Tynecastle. It cannot happen. It would not be nice to sit and watch a defeat at Tynecastle. Derek, I've felt in the last wee while, I have to say that Gio has been a wee bit prickly in his post-match stuff. And he said something yesterday when he was asked about the injured players that haven't been involved. Your Lawrence's, who is potentially going to be back for Hearts, but I think looks doubtful. Shooter and Hollander look like they're going to be out for an undefined amount of time. However, the one that gave me a huge concern was Kemar Roof, where the response was maybe quick, may not be. That's a bit of a worry, is it not?
Yeah, not half. I've no idea if we'll see. I know Tommy mentioned earlier he doesn't know when we'll see Hollander back. I've sort of lost hope that we'll see him back in a Rangers jersey. Kemar Roof is another one where you see him posting messages on his Instagram, give you a bit of belief that he's nearing a return to match fitness. But he's those comments from Van Bronckhorst yesterday are worrying, to say the least. And I understand the fact that he's not putting a time scale on it. We don't want another Jordan Rossiter 7 to 10 days case with players. It puts a bit of unnecessary pressure on guys. But to say really quick or to take a longer time is... You can't hang your hat on that, can you? You can't rely on guys like that. So if he comes back, then brilliant. But even if he does come back, as he did at the tail end of last season, you get him for 2 or 3 games and then he's out injured again. So you can't rely on these guys. There's too many players that Rangers have in their squad at the moment that are out, that are injury prone. John Souttar's another one. We all knew about his injury problems before the Rangers signed him. Who knows when he's going to be ready for action again? But everyone knew that, didn't they, before they signed him? So Rangers need more robust players. That's at the bottom line. There's too many players on the treatment table. Wages going out the door when they could be contributing on the park. Yanis Hadji, we all know about him. He's not going to be back until after the World Cup, and then who knows when he's going to be back playing again. He's another one that won't see for some time. Alex Lowry, everyone hopes that he's back soon, but I spoke to David McCallum last week, and he said that he's not anywhere near reaching the pitch again, so it's going to be a considerable amount of time for him. It's just a depressing state of affairs at the moment, isn't it? But the Roof one, on his day, Camara Roof probably the best out and out finisher Rangers have in the squad, but you simply can't rely on him. I think that's maybe the reason why he's at Rangers and not in the Premier League. In England on his day, he's brilliant, but yeah, he's one of a number of players I think Rangers should be looking at offloading. But then, what buyers can you find for these guys when they know of their injury track record? It might be a case of paying them off. So like you, Scott, I was a bit perplexed by what Van Bronckhorst said. I'm sure he's as puzzled as us all with regards to that. But it doesn't make for good reading, that's for sure.
No, Tommy, Derek's absolutely right. I was really, really surprised when I saw that. I mean, more like it or not, I think Giovanni Van Bronckhorst is under a lot of pressure just now. I've used the term very recently that his jacket's on a bit of a sugary peg. I stand by that because he's one result away from having a long, deep discussion with the people at the top of the tree at Ibrox. I really believe that, because this season hasn't been good so far. It just hasn't been good. We're not playing an attractive brand. We've had 3 doings back to back to back, and it's just at the moment it's not good. I think what you wanted him to say was to give some sort of definitive say. Camara Roof he'll be back training in 3 weeks' time. Do you know what I mean? With a view to him playing at some point before the end of the year. For him to come back and give the impression that he's really not that sure when he's going to be playing again, I don't really think instills a great confidence that we, as support, will see him again, frankly.
I think you're right. So maybe there's quite a lot in that. In terms of the Van Bronckhorst thing, yeah, I mean, the veneer or the gloss of getting to a European final, not winning it, unfortunately, and winning a Scottish Cup doesn't take a lot to rub that away.
Yeah.
And then you start to look at what he inherited and what happened in that league scenario and then where we are right now. And ultimately you need to win your league. Right? Bread and butter. In terms of Roof, the glib side, and we would say I'd settle for 7 to 10 weeks. If somebody would just tell me that, never mind 7 to 10 days. But yeah, I think you're right. And you could jump here, and I am jumping, right, and it's maybe slightly unfair. But when somebody says that type of thing, you start to think of the mental side of the game and the attitude as opposed to the medical side. It's maybe, like I said, relatively unfair and completely speculative, it has to be said. The wider truth is, I can live with Camara Roof never showing up in the Rangers jersey again. I can live with it, right? Magic. And I think the other part to that is, again, as you go further and you kind of look to the end of the season, or you look to January, and I'll maybe say something that a lot of people might not agree with. I can live with Yanis Hadji never wearing the Rangers jersey as well. I was being honest. Right? Yeah. These players tend to become so much better on the treatment table. Right? Magic, turn up and show it, so to speak. And it does face into the problem that Rangers have at the end of this season. Because a lot of the players we've just spoken about, goalkeeper situation, muddy at best, right? But you definitely, you need to do something there. Centre-back pairing, there's people in there who aren't playing, or their fitness questions. Up top, you've got big earners in terms of Camara Roof, who's not going to play. Hadji maybe the same as well, though I sense the club will try and rehabilitate him for a lot of different reasons. Then you look across the midfield, you've got guys like Stephen Davis, you've got Ryan Jack, etc., coming towards end of the contract and end of their careers, respectively. Ryan Kent not performing, coming to the end as well. That is a really, really big rebuild when you start to step back and look through all of that. Yeah. Now, coming off the back of winning 55 and then having a difficult season, getting to a European final, all that stuff, I didn't actually suspect that we would be here, given what we were looking at in terms of the continuity model, Ross Wilson, etc. And I'm not having a specific pop at him, right? But I would have thought we were in a slightly better position from a squad perspective. You can't do anything about injuries, right? Hey, mea culpa and all that type of stuff. But actually, when you start to look at it, that's a really big outlay come the end of this season, which makes the winning the title all the more important from an investment perspective.
Tommy, I'll stick with you because everything that we spoke about tonight, events at Paisley this afternoon means we are only 2 points behind. And I've heard and read arguments tonight that it almost puts a line through the performance at Celtic Park, which I think is open to debate. I don't think there'll ever be a line that will go through an afternoon like that. However, as far as an assessment on the season so far, we obviously do these kind of report cards going into the first international break. Where would you say we are? How would you say we've done?
Oh, it's been a long time since I got a report card. But I would say, and sorry, just before I get into that, you're absolutely right. Anybody who holds true from anything else other than a mathematical position, that the result in Paisley makes up for or gets some sort
Absolutely.
of get out of jail or gloss for the result at Parkhead is wrong, straight up wrong, incorrect, right? And that has a much bigger bearing in the manner of that defeat and the consistency of it, because we've come off the back of a couple of those as well, and that's not a pattern that I ever like to see. So purely from a numbers perspective, it's done something, right? But still behind. What could you point to from Gio's? So I think C, maybe a C plus, and the C plus is driven by the fact that we qualified for the UCL, and financially that is absolutely important. From a footballing perspective, okay, maybe I'll give the fiscal boardroom a B plus, and the footballing side a C minus, because really, what have you seen that's been great to hang your hat on?
Yeah,
not much. Certainly nothing really domestically. In Europe, there's been some good performances, but they've not been of the domination perspective. Right, USG was pretty good; they were a decent side. PSV away, C minus for the footballing side. There is nothing but regression across the side at the moment, and something does have to uptick, or we will not be looking at any sort of silverware conversations come the back end of the season.
Derek, same question to you. Where do you think we are after the sort of first cluster of games, and as we head into this international break?
That's what I go along with Tommy there. I think C plus, you'd have to say, European-wise, brilliant. And getting back into the creme de la creme of European football was a fantastic achievement. The PSV result was the highlight, I think, this season. Domestically, it's been turgid. Supporters aren't enjoying what they're watching. Even spoke to a guy in Amsterdam when I was flying home, and he said he left at half time, which sort of evokes memories of the 90s when you're getting pumped by Juventus and Ajax back then, and folk are leaving in their droves, and Ibrox was half empty. But the fans reigned supreme, and even on Saturday there, I was hearing that the fans were leaving in their droves as well, and it was pretty much empty upon full time. So that tells you everything you need to know. Rangers aren't playing entertaining football, nowhere near it. They've got the players there to do so, but Giovanni van Bronckhorst has to find a way, as I mentioned earlier, of entertaining the fans and putting on a brand of football that is enjoyable to watch and get the fans, give that sense of belief. That's what I was saying, that the performance was vital on Saturday. You had to give the supporters that sense of belief that they feel they can claw that gap back, and not only that, go on and win the title and do much better in the Champions League. And I don't think they've done anywhere near that. So questions remain. The jury is very much out. I just hope that when the players come back from the international break, hopefully revitalised, but I have my doubts, Scott, whether they can do so. I just hope. I had worries that the league might have been out of sight by the second Old Firm game at Ibrox. That result today is certainly increased the mood, increased optimism. But you need to look. You need to look at get your own house in order. At the moment, Rangers aren't showing anywhere near the standards or the quality expected to maintain a title challenge. So a lot of improvements need to be carried out for me to be convinced that this side and this group of players can go on and win the title. So it remains to be seen if that's the case. But I go along with Tommy. C plus probably for me.
Derek, for anyone that's been living on Mars, let us know a little bit about the Rangers Review and where we can see you.
Yeah, so you can check us out. We have the rangersreview.co.uk. We like to cover Rangers forensically, so unlike anywhere else, we go in depth and look at the tactical side of the game. So we focus a lot on that side. You can see our articles online, and we also have a daily video Monday to Friday at 9:30 in the morning. You can find that on YouTube, Facebook, and also on Twitter. And we also cover each and every game, so lots of insight into each and every one. We like to carry out interviews with opposition journalists, especially before big European games. Big interviews every week as well with ex-players that you might not have heard of for some time. So yeah, rangersreview.co.uk. We've got a deal on at the moment. It's a subscription website, but we've got a deal on at the moment. It's just £1 for 2 months worth of content, so it's cracking value. So yeah, go and have a look and see if it's for you. But yeah, that's where you can find us.
Derek, thank you for joining us tonight. I've really enjoyed having you on. Well done. Thank you, mate.
No, thanks for having us on, Scott. And yeah, it's great to be back on talking all things Rangers, even though it's not been rosy in the garden. It's great to talk about the club we all love.
Indeed, always good to see you. Tommy, thanks for coming on as well. Hope you've enjoyed your Sunday night.
Yeah, it's actually nice to be on as well. I feel that if nothing else, I've learned that I need to respond more to the This Is Ibrox team.
You've offered something.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Tommy has left the chat.
So listen, we should say programming at This Is Ibrox Tell Us is a little bit different this week. No bulletin tomorrow for all the obvious reasons. We do have Kyle back on Wednesday night for a bulletin where he will do a review of the European campaign thus far, and we're back on Friday night with a bulletin as well, which should cover something from a domestic perspective. Don't forget, you can check us out across social media on Twitter and Instagram and on Facebook. We're on there as well. If you have been checking us out on YouTube tonight, I apologise if you've been commenting in there. My machine has not been playing nice, so if you have left comments in there, we've missed them. My fault. I do apologise. Sorry, Thomas.
I think what really happened was that royalty comment has went right to your head. Right,
totally took me off.
Yeah, I'm not interacting with these people. Right, I'll get the butler to do it. That's the
Goodness me. So yes, as I say, a little change to the programming for this week, but join Kyle on Wednesday from 7 if you can. Thanks to guys for joining us. Thanks to David in the background for doing the direct, and I should always point out every week he does a fine job. Thank you for watching this Sunday night. Good night.